Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. I'm joined by Armando Velez, Locked On Panthers, Locked On NHL Network. I've been on his show a couple times now. He's on mine. Armando, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Jim? Great to be here. Great to have met you in the Stanley Cup final as the Panthers won back-to-back, and obviously you coming on my show the last two days to discuss the extensions for the Florida Panthers now that we have more than just a few now.
Yeah, we have more than just a few, and it feels like the whole band is back together. And we'll get to the ones on July 1st, but I want to take us back a little bit. The Stanley Cup final, they win, they go back-to-back. But again, Bill Zito, the way his words come out, he says, I want to get all three guys signed. We get Bennett signed. That was the one we kind of figured. But the other two of Marchand and Ekblad, to keep Brad and to keep Aaron, we talked about it on your show, but, tell my viewers your reaction to getting both those guys signed.
I mean, the Ekblad one I was less surprised of because of the fact that he's called Florida home his entire life with being the number one overall pick, going through so many. He was, when he first was drafted by the Florida Panthers, it was at the start of the new ownership change for the Panthers. So he's seen the transition of what the ownership was trying to do. And the fact that the Panthers have had so many coaches from then, you're thinking they were coming out of the Kevin Dineen, Peter Horacek era, and then after that with more head coaches like Gerard Gallant, Bob Bugner, Joe Quenneville, and then so now he's at a handful of coaches now for his tenure here with the Florida Panthers. And to think that he's changed his game from offensive defenseman to more defensively minded under Paul Maurice's system, and to think that he's been part of a big shutdown pair along with Gustav Forsling, which is another great move that Bill Zito made, getting him off waivers. The fact is, with Aaron Ekblad and getting the results with Florida and the place that he's happy based on his family life as well. He's one of the few guys who doesn't have kids yet with the team, but everything off the ice with his wife also being a doctor in the area of South Florida, that's actually a big factor of all the other things off the ice. And the fact that he's happy in South Florida, and they made it work. And Brad Marchand, I was way more surprised when it came to that signing, because the rumor was from Chris Johnson of TSN and The Athletic that it was going to be a 4x8. The total number that Marchand made would have been around the same number, 32 million over the 4-year projected, but it's going to be 31.5 over 6 years. Will he finish that contract, or will remain to be seen? It's maybe a little bit of a thought like the Chris Tanev deal that the Leafs gave him just last season. And his clause is changed from no move to modified no trade in 2029. Didn't mention this of Aaron Ekblad. His changes in 2031, which is a little bit of a thank you, like we mentioned on my show yesterday, of, hey, you've been through it all in this region with this franchise. And also the fact is that we are going to give you a little bit of a thank you. So now 8 more years of Aaron Ekblad. He's going to finish 19 seasons with the Florida Panthers. Number 5 is going to be hung up in the rafters one day at Amerant Bank Arena. And the fact is that the intensity, the hard bruising game that is come from all three lines is going to continue, especially with Brad Marchand complementing Anton Lundell as well as that group did, because Anton Lundell was a plus 19. 7 of 10 goals that Brad Marchand scored in the playoffs were go-ahead goals. So talk about the clutch factor that he's had, and also elimination games on the road for a chance to clinch. In Tampa, in Toronto, Brad Marchand and Seth Jones were big factors into the Panthers winning that Game 7 in Toronto, finding a way to get through and into the Eastern Conference Final. And also the big turning point for Brad Marchand, especially Game 3, where the Panthers were down 0-2, and he scores that goal off a redirection to send the Florida to cut the deficit to 2-1, and that was really the big game changer, momentum shift in the entire playoffs for the Panthers. You could argue that. And it's just, once again, for the Panthers, just an absolute fit. And him not wanting to leave. Absolutely.
No, exactly. He's not wanting to leave, and you hear about it. You heard Bill Zito talk about it. guys, he's hoping that the culture that they were building, we're hoping that guys could take some less money and stay. And I think everybody did. And, you look around the deals that some of the other defensemen get. You look at Ekblad, what he took at $6.1 million, but now you saw Vladislav Gavrikov, $7 million in New York, Provorov a little around 8.5 in Columbus. And, everybody says, oh, tax stuff. Well, if Gavrikov is going to take $7 million in New York, I live in New Jersey. I know what the tax situation is in New York. I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Panthers are building a winning culture. Bill Zito has done that. It starts with the owner, Vinny Viola, and they're trying to bring everybody back together. You wondered, about Thomas Nosek. They get that deal done. Daniil Tarasov gets $1 million. Everything is setting up perfectly. You bring in Jeff Petrie as your Nate Schmidt replacement, and best of luck to Nate Schmidt because he was a big-time factor for the Florida Panthers in that run to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and Nate Schmidt getting a 3-year deal at just over $3 million with the Utah Hockey Club. It's crazy. Another Florida Panthers Stanley Cup champion signs with Utah. Kevin Stenlund the year before, and now Nate Schmidt. So now, even though they weren't teammates and they didn't cross paths together, they can talk about their time with the Florida Panthers and how much they enjoyed it. And also Kevin Stenlund, when the Utah Hockey Club comes to South Florida in their first visit, he gets to see Nate Schmidt and see the embrace that he will get, and maybe a little bit of a reminder of what he got when he returned with the Utah Hockey Club to South Florida. Which, funny enough, when Utah came to South Florida, that was Brad Marchand's debut, and he assisted on Sam Bennett's overtime winner. So crazy full circle thing there for the Florida Panthers there. But when it comes to the extensions, Tomas Nosek making the same exact salary that he made last year. I mean, that fourth line, only 1 goal against at 5-on-5. And to think the recovery from Tomas Nosek and the vote of confidence that Paul Maurice gave him after game 1 with that delay of game penalty, puck over glass, and then Leon Draisaitl scores in overtime. The fact is that he still trusted that line. They still hadn't, at that point, not had a goal against at 5-on-5, and they were a +3 overall in the postseason, and it changed the tide once they were inserted into the lineup in Game 3 in the second round against Toronto. It's crazy enough. I'm referencing that again, and then
but there was a big series for them because, not to interrupt you, but if you think about it, if Toronto scores an overtime goal or goes up 3-0 in that game, over. In that series, it's over. It's over.
It just goes to show the importance of it for sure. But for the Panthers there, and just Tomas Nosek and Paul Maurice saying, I want you guys on the ice for the last shift right before they throw their sticks up in their buckets to celebrate the Stanley Cup champion. And the fact that AJ Greer and Jonah Gadjevich are already under contract coming into this season, it feels like a little bit of a void emotionally if Tomas Nosek wasn't there. And the fact is that they got him under that same AAV is incredible. And to think that they even tried to replace him in the trade deadline, bringing in Nico Sturm at the deadline. And also Tomas Nosek dealt with some injuries early on in the season. In the very first preseason game against Nashville, they always have an annual doubleheader. He gets hurt. He doesn't come back until the Panthers go into the Global Series against the Dallas Stars in Finland. So he dealt with an injury as well to start the year last year. So a lot that he has overcome. And the fact is, bringing in a 7th defenseman in Jeff Petrie, yeah, he's on the older side. It's a right-handed shot. That is a whole bunch of insurance and a lot of you can interchange in and out him and Uvis Belinskis if you want to put Dmitry Kulikov back on the left side, which Dmitry Kulikov has also shown that he's very comfortable playing on that right-hand side. And also, the fact that they re-signed Aaron Ekblad, you don't have to have Dmitry Kulikov go up in the lineup temporarily like they had to do last season. So even with the cap crunch, wow, it's still amazing the amount of work that Bill Zito has done.
Yeah, I think I'd make a wrestling reference, acknowledge me for Bill Zito, as Roman Reigns would do, because I'm a big wrestling guy. Best in the world, in my opinion. And he probably should have won GM of the year. He's the best GM in the league. I had Russ Cohen on, who does scouting, and we talked about it, and he's like, yeah, he's the best GM in the league. And what he's done, the work that he's done, the yeoman's work that he's put in to get this group to stay together, to have a chance to run this thing back again. and we've talked about this on your show, and I want to bring it to my viewers. The fact is, the Florida Panthers' advantage is a rising salary cap. And the big thing is everything 2027 to 2030. I mean, that's the flexibility area for the Florida Panthers.
And the flexibility that they will have, which they won't have to pay Bob big dollar if they were to re-sign him. The average of AAV for the rest of the debt players that they would have past this year is going to be dedicated to debt players, and they're not going to sign every single guy to $2-3 million deals. So some of them will be minimum, and some of them some of the debt pieces that you bring outside of the Florida Panthers could be $5-6 million players, maybe one or two of them, not like four of them, but still you have the Panthers have that space in order to still make it work on the roster. Chances are the clauses aren't going to be tight for some of the new debt players coming in, so which Bill Zito is not going to try to shoot himself in the foot right before the other clauses do come into play, but that won't be a while now until 2030, 2029 for Brad Marchand, as we mentioned earlier. So that's a great thing about the amount of guys they have locked in, which is the core 10, like we spoke about on my show. But here's the thing also, Jim, of how impressive this is the fact that they could still manage this and be cap compliant this year. We all assume that Evan Rodriguez is going to be the guy traded. If he were to get traded right now, the Panthers would have $50K in cap space. So I already did the numbers and the calculation. We spoke about how Mackie Samoskevich is not necessarily on the table yesterday. I don't think that's the case as much now. They could offer him up to 1.2 and be 1.15 over the cap. So if they want to delay it and Matthew Tkachuk starts on LTIR, they could delay possibly putting Jesper Boquist on waivers. And if he goes unclaimed, remember, for the viewers, only up to 1.15 AAV comes off the books. If a player goes unclaimed, they could still be right at 0, but at 21 players. So they could get that calculation right. And just the amount of numbers crunching that they're still able to do to get this done, it's still quite amazing.
Well, that's why I don't want to, when I hear the argument about, no tax, no state income tax and all that, that's why, Armando, you brought up the great point of the cap crunching, the ability by Bill Zito, the staff, to understand the salary cap, to understand the CBA, what they can do, what they can't do. Don't discredit what these GMs can do to put together a winning organization and to put together a winning team on the ice. The number crunching, they can take advantage of this one more year with these paper transactions in the AHL too. Guys don't have to go down. Just put them on. You just say, paper transaction, all that. I agree. You can delay it a little bit. I think the big thing with Evan Rodriguez is, I think you and I were talking about this, and not to spoil anything, because I know you're going to want to talk about it too, but maybe they may have to give up something for Erod as well if they have to trade him.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's and credit to Evan Rodriguez, especially in the first Stanley Cup final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. He led the team in points throughout that entire series. 7 points in 7 games, had a great assist to Carter Verhaeghe on the first goal, as Carter Verhaeghe was shifted down from power play 1 to power play 2, and also had the 3 goals in the 2 games, in games 1 and games 2, when the series was in South Florida. So definitely also the Panthers are going to miss that flexibility that Evan Rodriguez brings. Right-handed shot forward, speedy, great stick skills. This is the thing with Evan Rodriguez. He started off on the 4th line to start these playoffs. Went all the way up to the top line, and then when things weren't going well, Paul Maurice made the switch necessary in the final to switch the wingers of Verhaeghe and Rodriguez. Now it's going to have to be a new guy going into the mix on the top 6 that could be that Swiss Army knife, the flexible guy that can go 1 through 4. Hey, I even said it at the beginning of last season for Mackie Samoskevich, you are not having him in the lineup to play a bottom 6 role. So with that hole in the top 6 for the Panthers, he can slot right into either the Tkachuk Bennett line, or with Barkov, and have Verhaeghe shift down to the second line. So that still gives the Panthers so much options when it comes to what they can do when it comes to when it comes to this lineup going into 2025-26.
Yeah, and you mentioned the flexibility, and that's what, that's a great place to go with Paul Maurice and the flexibility and how he moves guys around the lineup. Because you mentioned Erod being flexible. Jesper Boquist is one of those guys too, because he could play on a top line, but he also can play on your bottom line as well. And he fits in so well. I mean, the minute I always joked about this in the playoffs. When I saw he was a scratch and came back in, I'm like, yo, just Jesper Boquist goal. It's automatic.
Yeah. Twice that happened in the Leafs series and in the Carolina series. And also, I got to mention this because you're a New Jersey Devils fan. In November, when the Devils played the Florida Panthers, it was a series that they played in South Florida. Bennett was hurt. Jesper Boquist was inserted into the lineup. The Panthers lost both of those games, but Jesper Boquist was inserted into that second line for the Panthers, and he actually was able to be very impactful in those games for the Panthers there. So when called upon, Jesper Boquist has been very impactful. And hey, teams are going to look at that. Everyone wants to emulate the Florida Panthers way. So even if a guy, even the best teams put guys on waivers and have them claim, and people are going to want to talk to them and say, hey, what do the Florida Panthers talk about in their meetings that make them so successful? About how do they go about watching tape and everything, rehab, rest, everything when it comes to that. So everyone's going to get a little piece. Yeah, it's going to catch up to the Panthers in years to come. I mean, because look at what's happened in Tampa Bay. Matthew Darche gets hired to the New York Islanders. Derek Lalonde, even though he wasn't on the Stanley Cup championship teams, he goes to Tampa Bay after they win, gets a little bit of mentoring from John Cooper, and now he gets hired again as a coach. So that's another thing Jeff Blashill, not Derek Lalonde, Jeff Blashill. So that's another thing about how the Panthers being the example and the standard, people are going to want a little bit of a piece of that.
Well, and you mentioned this, and I know we're going to wrap some things up, but I look at teams like Toronto and Montreal in the same division, and I see what they do with their moves. You bring in Matthias Michelli, Nick Waugh, part of that Marner trade, but you take shots on guys that maybe aren't fulfilling their roles in other lineups. I look what Montreal did with. I know they did it already with Kirby Dach, but I'm saying like Zach Bolduc with the Logan Mailloux trade. Like that's a guy to me that could play their second line center. And you saw it with Bill Zito taking chances on guys like a Carter Verhaeghe, Gustav Forsling, giving these guys bigger roles, Paul Maurice bringing those guys up and saying, okay, go do it because we know you have the ability. And I think that we're seeing that with the Panther way there too.
Yeah, and how much of a win-win is that for St. Louis, as they got a lot of defensemen who are on the older side? I know Torrey Krug didn't play last season; he probably won't play hockey again. And to think that they got with one of the offer sheets that they had with Edmonton, taking a chance on Logan Mailloux, who was kind of blocked in Montreal with the amount of defensemen that they have, and they're able to add to their forward core. So that's another example of providing chances for other guys who might have been blocked elsewhere. I know for St. Louis and their forwards, there's still questions on what's going to be happening with Jordan Kyrou and his future. So we'll see about that. So they're seeing about how the Panthers have taken chances on guys and trying to do that with their lineup. I know the LA Kings with some of their signings, they look at also veterans as well who have been on long playoff runs. Cody Ceci, Corey Perry, as guys that they brought in. So that's another thing about even with Carolina. Even though it's a division rival, Keandre Miller was part of an Eastern Conference team that made it to the second and final round and wants a little bit of piece of that. Who has that experience? So it's another thing about trying to bring leadership into the mix and seeing if they can rejuvenate their game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I see that, and obviously you mentioned the Broberg Holloway offer sheets last year, and it's going to be interesting. Maybe somebody does that with Bo Byram. But one more before we wrap this up. Panthers deleted. What are your expectations for this team coming into this year? I know everybody can say, three-peat, they're going to try to do it. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know how much hockey can they catch up. But if we're going to have Olympic breaks and we're going to have World Cup of Hockey breaks, a team like Florida, that's an advantage for them.
Yeah. It's funny because my expectation was not even to repeat as Stanley Cup champions this year. I don't think there'll be really a drop off in the regular season because of how ready they were at training camp and how quick they took care of business once they brought the cup, lifted the banner, and then just absolutely manhandled the Boston Bruins on opening night, which I'm making a prediction now. Their opening night opponent will be the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's my prediction as of right now. It only makes sense because Canadian teams start on the Wednesday. The Carolina Hurricanes aren't that big of a draw. And they played the Lightning 2 years in a row. So Tampa Bay only makes sense for opening night, and Boston's rebuilding. So I think that's going to be the matchup. But I'm interested to see how they start off the gate. And the fact is, as a Panthers consumer and a host, I feel it with the where the Florida Panthers players are coming from, of never wanting to go through another playoff run and not win the Stanley Cup. It's the same way that I feel. I do not want to cover a team that's not winning the Stanley Cup. So I think they're going to continue to get motivated. Even Aaron Ekblad spoke about it with the TSN crew for their trade deadline special on that we could also get here on ESPN Plus in the US. He was talking about how the players are already trying to get back on the ice to just get ready and get their bodies ready for the grind. So they'll be ready. I'm not gonna make a prediction right now on if they'll three-peat, but I think that they'll be still very laser focused. There might be some valleys here in the regular season, especially March. It usually tends to happen with the Panthers, but you want to peak at the right time like they did. I mean, remember, everybody was worried about them in April when they were resting guys. So that's another thing. Just peak at the right time.
Exactly. And you can never count this Florida Panthers team out. Real quick, before we get you out of here, where can everybody find you? And what do you got cooking up for your next episode on Locked On Panthers?
All right. People can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account anywhere you listen to the podcast. Follow it on Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers as well, along with X. And on Wednesday's show, we are going to discuss the signings of Nosek, Danil Tarasov, Bill Zito speaking to the media, Aaron Ekblad as well. And also we are going to discuss the history of cap clearing trades from either teams that have won the Stanley Cup or have made the Stanley Cup final, and what to expect of a possible trade package for Evan Rodriguez, or what the Panthers will possibly have to give up.
Well, Armando, we could talk hockey for hours, buddy. I know your time is limited. Thank you so much for coming on the Full Press NHL podcast today. It's such a pleasure to have you here and talk hockey with you.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much as always.
Guys, Full Press NHL, please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Follow along, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Again, take care. This has been Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers on the Locked On NHL Network. Guys, take care. We'll be back again soon.
Full Press Hockey Coverage with Jim Biringer.